Welcome, everyone. Today we have a very special guest who's the creative director, author, filmmaker, and agency partner at Vitals Agency. He's also the producer and co-host of the Fizzle show. Welcome, everyone. Aiden Fishbein. How's it going, Aiden?
It's pretty good, man. Nice to be here.
Very good. Aiden, did I pronounce Fishbein correctly?
You did. You nailed it.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. So I kind of gave everybody a little quick introduction to you, and tell us basically who you are and what's your story as a person.
Yeah. Well, it's a long one, as most stories typically are for people. But yeah, I'm definitely an all over the place kind of guy. I have a lot of passions. Obviously, my titles kind of gave you a little hint that I have many different things that I enjoy. I do many different things for clients at my agency. And as a result, I've had to learn a lot of things, which makes me qualified, I guess, to kind of help other people build their businesses. So that's kind of how I give back to the entrepreneurial community, is sharing that stuff with people on the Fizzle show. But yeah, like that's my life story, is kind of being very interested in lots of different things, not knowing exactly what to focus on, dabbling here, dabbling there. And also back and forth between like technical and creative stuff, so it wasn't like just always artistic filmmaking, writing, stuff like that. It's always been very technical too. I was drawn to math and chess and strategy and all that. So,
wow.
Yeah, no, that was the kid thing. And there's a lot in the middle that is probably just more of the same. And when I started realizing that I needed to earn a living, those were the first kinds of things that I dipped my toe back into. And it just so happened that, I could actually scrounge some sense together, doing some creative stuff. Marketing started entering the picture, and you could do some creative marketing and strategic branding. And long story short, worked for some people, some creative professionals. Some of them were out of their minds. Some of them were brilliant. Some of them were out of their minds and brilliant. And so, learning from those people, sticking close to those people, and eventually starting to freelance on my own and built a business with a partner. So, that's actually the shortest little nutshell story I've ever given. So I'll have to re-listen to this episode so I can do it again.
I don't know if you ever search yourself on Google, but
all day, every day.
Oh, do you really?
No, not really. It's been a little while. Maybe I should do it soon.
But when you do search, it shows up on one of them. Somewhere in the first page, it says known for movie Nightmare Alley. So,
oh man.
And so that's a movie, a 2010 movie. What did you do there?
That's kind of a hilarious story. So Nightmare Alley was one of many really, really awful horror movies that I was making back in the early 2000s. It was some of the most fun creative projects that I've ever done. Also, for me, it was all free. Everything was free. All the actors were unpaid actors. But at one point in time, we had, I think it was in Nightmare Alley, they're all kind of like horror shorts. They're like 5-6 minute videos. We had Alice Cooper's daughter, Calico Cooper. We got to hook her up with some blood squirting machine and cut her throat in some alley here in Phoenix, Arizona. But it's so funny. So that is technically my one and only IMDb entry, right? Because you found that on IMDb?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Yeah. This is extra special. And in that movie, I did a bunch of things. Like I was just saying, I was a production assistant. This was early in my kind of filmmaking career, but I was a production assistant. I was an editor. I cut the trailer. I'll try and find a link to the trailer for Nightmare Alley for you after this. And then I was also an extra. I got stabbed in the neck myself by Jack the Ripper. So that was really fun too.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how did you go from that into your agency owner, successful agency owner now? You're also one of the hosts at the Fizzle show. How did you get into the Fizzle show?
So it's kind of an interesting thing. I haven't had anybody dig into Nightmare Alley as a springboard in any recent interview, but it's actually kind of perfect because that was a creative endeavor, right? It was free. I was just doing it because it was fun. I was with cool people. And a lot of these people I was working with at this really, really awful call center. So we all worked in this telemarketing phone room during the day. And on the weekends, we would write these awful scripts and shoot these awful movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what that did, it was this really weird microcosm in 2008 and 2009 for me, where I was developing pretty hardcore sales skills too, right? So I was developing like all that high pressure, many rejections over and over and over, low close ratio sales skill, right? In the phone room, and honing creative craft at the same time. And it was just a matter of time before those things started to marry each other. And they started naturally doing that at first. I, got a little bit of a reputation as somebody that could do these creative things, and having gotten comfortable selling, I was now comfortable asking for money from people that wanted creative stuff, not just home-based businesses, right? um, so that started happening, and I think maybe this is a pretty common trajectory for most people. You start realizing you have a passion, you do some of it for free. Some people start noticing what you've been doing, and then you're like, okay, maybe I can actually take this place. And you start to learn, or start to look for places to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, what was really conducive, because I was like riding my bike to work, was podcasts, right? I didn't have time to read books. I wasn't in school. And I didn't know about coaches and mentors and stuff. So podcasts, like putting headphones in and riding my bike half an hour each direction to work, was how I like started learning. And if you've listened to the Fizzle show, it is an incredibly addictive way to get business information. It is
Mm-hmm.
maybe the silliest, most lighthearted, but still super robust, actionable insight from guys that have done this, that have proven track records, and good variety. You've got Crazy Chase, you've got Lean Analytical Corbett. At the time, they had Caleb and Barrett, and also Steph. And all these people brought these really interesting perspectives, all super seasoned, but all super personable. And I loved it, man. I loved that podcast. And that was like me just listening, doing the things that they said to do. A lot of times things in my life were syncing up with podcast topics. So I got like, kind of like, oh, the universe is totally pointing me in the right direction here. But that was the beginning. I was a long time podcast listener before I started paying Fizzle for their product, which is $35 a month for a membership that accesses all the courses they've ever made, a community of entrepreneurs that are also doing the same thing, that won't let you quit. They're doing it alongside you, that you can rely on and connect with and help hold accountable. And like webinars and live coaching, like this is a crazy value for $35, right? So finally, I justified, after years of listening to the podcast, to like dip my toe in the paid program, right? Which I tried for free. There were like a 5-week free trial. So after the 5 weeks were up, I was like, totally, I'm totally in. And then fast forward another couple of years, like what they taught me in their courses happened to work. I built my business. And then when they had an opening for kind of a giving back, community-based content thing, I was like, I'd love to get involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm now a case study too, so it was kind of a cool, perfect world scenario where they needed an opening, and I just like, obviously swallowed bait and tackle their message and followed their footsteps, and it worked, and I've learned my own lessons in the creative world. So that's kind of that's the story right there.
Yeah, no, it's a good one.
Yeah.
You mentioned there that how the Fizzle show is kind of addicting, how you can learn about business stuff in a fun way.
Yeah.
And I can really vouch that how true that is, because I went there to
Yeah, your episode.
I went there to listen to an episode, and in particular, I wanted to know what the intro would look like with sound, or what it would sound like with music. Sorry,
Right. Uh-huh.
and I heard it, and I'm like, this is so cool. I was like, I wanted to change my intro immediately. And,
Right.
I host 2 podcasts. I'm like, I got to change my intro, man. I got to do something so exciting that gets me
It
wanting
grips
to
you.
hear more. And
Hmm.
then I'm like, but although I can't just change now just like that, because people get used to hearing one kind of personality. And
You have to
although
be gentle with change. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, what ended up happening was I subscribed, and I have now close to 17 hours of listen time of the Fizzle show because it's
Yeah.
cool. So there you go.
That's funny, man. So you hadn't listened to any Fizzle show before you got on on our podcast where we interviewed you, and you got to hear Chase without music just going crazy, right?
Yes, that was
And
the part. Yeah.
then got you, and then you heard the music. So that's weird. I'm sure that was just a bizarre experience for you.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it was, but I mean, it was so cool that I'm still tempted to to do a bit of changes
Yeah.
on the my intro, right?
Iterations, man. Yeah, it's always good. Always good to develop.
Very good. So, as a creative person, because we already saw that, right? Uh, it's very easy to see how you got into agency because, in my personal opinion, you need to be super creative and love being creative uh, to run an agency and to right.
Sure.
So that was kind of a perfect fit for you, and it is working out obviously for you.
Yeah, and it's oddly enough, I mean, like you said, it's easy. It's really easy to see, an artist, like a kid that likes to draw and make pictures, growing up to be a graphic designer, or it's easy to see somebody like that finding themselves in my position. But what's extra special is that, like I said, I'm not just creative. I really do have a analytical and an operations oriented mindset. So it was even more perfect, right? So I've got this, I can be organized, operational, and strategic inside of a business that provides creative services, right? So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful combination.
Yes, yeah. So the analytical part is something that I wasn't originally, and I had to train myself
Yeah, most people
on
have to do that. Yeah,
because it doesn't come easy, and it's very, very needed, right?
absolutely. And a lot of times, what I geek out about a lot is the relationships between founders, right? So I was on another podcast recently with a fizzler, Tom Ross, on his show, the Honest Designers Show, and I was giving a lot of credit to this other platform of entrepreneurial education. It's called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I forget the guy's name, but they write books and they have courses and templates and stuff. But they've kind of come up with, and they're not the first ones to do this, but they've come up with what they believe to be a really incredible partnership structure, right? So it's between somebody who is a visionary
Mhm.
and somebody who is an integrator, which is kind of like the analytical person. So what's more important than the fact that they've discovered this and figured out how to diagnose you as one or the other is the case studies that they do. So if we look at Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, one had the idea, one was the executor. Same thing with like Walt Disney and Roy Disney. Nobody knows about Roy Disney, his brother. But Roy Disney was like the money man. He was the genius behind the licensing and the franchising and the merchandise, right?
Mhm.
Walt Disney just wanted to make pictures, and he was a genius. He revolutionized the animation system, but he was awful with money. He had like almost all of his money when he died under his mattress, right?
Hmm.
And Roy Disney was the business mastermind behind it, and as a result, many of these relationships they're incredible. So they're rocket fuel in the sense that they get these rocket ships like up into orbit, right? But as you can imagine, these are very, very different kinds of people. So just like rocket fuel, it's highly combustible, right?
Yeah.
So you might explode. You probably will explode at some point. Hopefully it's after liftoff. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak famously had a falling out, and but it was after they'd like made some amazing equipment and built what I think what is the first $1 trillion company was Apple. Yeah.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So it's I mean, there's that. So as soon as at least the rocket ship blew up later, but it still blew up, because analytical people and creative people are very different. They can help each other out a lot, but It's a delicate relationship.
And are they also, this is probably just, it could be a misconception, but it's my idea that creative people are a bit all over the place, right?
Sure.
So
Fair assessment.
kind of like, oh, squirrel, and, I want to do this, I want to do that, and just be creating things. So you have to work with them. How hard is that?
So it's a great question. That was what prior to having my own agency, that was what my careers were kind of like defined as, so being creative was kind of like played second fiddle to my analytical stuff. So I would always kind of I'd get sought out, and I was attractive to these crazy creative people, the very, very distractible kinds of guys, and I think it's a fair assessment. It's definitely not, we shouldn't stereotype it completely with the distractible people. Plenty of these creatives had successful businesses, obviously, before I came along. But that's the truth. That was a push and pull kind of thing. I came into situations with creatives that couldn't stay focused and helped them stay focused. They would push back, and I would help them, and they would also help me be more risky, right? Be more atmospheric in my thinking, because I'm very risk averse. I'm very conservative with my stuff, and I could afford to be a little bit more distractible and creative. You know what I mean? So I had a lot of those relationships. Yeah.
So being a little bit conservative, does that mean that you don't take too many big risks, so you don't have many failures?
That's a good question. I think the quick answer is yes. The longer, more complex answer that I tell myself is that I put in what I believe to be a healthy and responsible amount of research and planning, and that helps me mitigate failure. I will be the first one to tell you, though, that there are more risks that I could be taking. I could do well to be pushed further outside of my comfort zone, because the truth is, I built my agency without missing a paycheck. All my three partners at the time, my two other partners, we built this company and didn't take paychecks until we could. We all transitioned out of our other jobs into the business at the same time, and we had structured it in such a way where we didn't have to do that. And 2.5 years later, we still have not gone without a paycheck. Now, we've also not grown at lightning speeds that you see some other companies grow at, right? So It's always a trade-off. And I think generally, if you did look from an outside perspective, which I try to do myself, and it's always good to have people around you that can tell you when you're being stupid and crazy, right? My stupid and crazy is just me and my best thinking. I'll give it a lot of credit. I'll think it's the only right answer. So as a result of that, I think I've gained a little bit more perspective on the fact that, man, it's time to take another leap, man. There's a springboard. I can hop on it and see how high I go. And maybe I'll hit the ground. Maybe I'll hurt myself a little bit. But the truth is, there are more safety nets for me put in place that I will never have to use. So I might as well use some, And yeah, I think yes, the process of calculating risk is super good, but you're never going to be able to be certain. You're never going to say, before I take this leap, I know exactly how I'm going to land. I know I will make the jump. Fill in the blank. There's always going to be uncertainty, and at some point, you're just going to have to leap.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you knew how you were going to land and where you were going to land, there would be nothing exciting about that.
Right. Wouldn't everybody be doing it?
Yes.
Yeah.
True enough. So we were talking about how you were having a bunch of failures before, but you were not learning from them, and now you actually are learning from documenting your wins as well, right?
Right.
Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. So I've always been, many aspects of my life have been, have had a process, like a reflective process. So like a stepping outside, or astral projecting, if you will, or just looking at your thoughts, very meta. So looking at, how did I feel yesterday, right? Journaling is an example. Meditation is an example. And in the business world, there are these things that I've always been a fan of, called postmortems, or project retrospectives. And very simply, they're just when you finish something, a project, or a relationship with a client or a product, right? A launch. You just take some time afterwards to look back and see, how did it go? Did it go good? Did it not go good? If it didn't go good, what could we have changed? And what should we do next time, right? And so those are the very fundamental questions. But out of those questions, you can ask 1,000 other questions, depending on your specific industry. You know, if it's a client relationship, did all decision makers make the planning meeting? Was there a planning meeting, right? Were the feedback given? So anyway, we didn't have any of those things in place in the beginning, right? And the worst thing in the world, even worse than making 1,000 mistakes and then making another mistake, the same mistake you've always made, and being like, why can't I learn from this mistake? Because you haven't examined it. What's worse than that is finally hitting a home run, right? And being like, oh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
How do I do it again? Where do we start? You know? Especially because if you're going from flop to win, which is pretty typical, you know, you try something, it doesn't work. You try something, it does work. And you have to start another project without faith that it's going to be one way or another. It's a hard thing to do. It's hard to sustain excitement, emotion, and your energy level if it's always a coin flip, whether or not this next thing you're going to try is going to be good. And like what we were just talking about, you'll never be able to guarantee success, but it's just like any scientific experiment. You have enough successes, and if you're documenting them, you start noticing consistencies. You start noticing things that every time you have a project that does well, it's because X, Y, and Z were part of process A, B, and C, right? And you take those things, and the next time you start a project, you say, okay, the most important thing to do is make sure that we get everybody on the same page before any money exchanges hands, right? Or make sure that we have a good regular update protocol in place for us to give rounds of revision to clients and for them to give us feedback, you know? Those are real examples that in the beginning, we didn't think they were important. We didn't even know that those things were needed. And now they're part of a booklet and a worksheet that we use every time we finish a project that has all these questions for us. So we don't have to remember the questions even, right? So we just go through this list, we assess the project, and if it was a win, we put that in the win bank so that we can look at it next time we start a project.
You know what? I really love that, because the opposite is something I do, right? If something fails, I make sure it gets documented, and let's not do this again, because unfortunately I have done that before. And the one thing I hated the most was repeating failures,
Making the same mistake twice.
Exactly. Yeah. That would, like, why did I have to learn that same lesson again? That was painful.
Yeah, it's painful.
But, exactly. But the documenting the wins, like, that's such a great thing, because when you're winning, you're not thinking of like, let me write this down, how it was done, right, all that stuff.
Pain it makes it really easy to focus on it. But when you're, you know, exuberant and experiencing joy, the last thing you want to do is sit down and spend 30 minutes with a journal, you know? You don't want to do that. You want to party. You want to go celebrate. Yep.
So that means you have a ton of systems in place. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And these systems, do you write them yourself when you're on that spot? Do you have VA to do that, or how does that process work?
It's a good question. So specifically with the postmortem, we, I think, have 3 different kinds of postmortem, and it's just a list of questions. So it's something that we do in a Google Doc, me and my partner. And at the end of a client relationship, for example, we'll do a client postmortem, very, very specific about the relationship. So all the questions will be about communication and feedback, and did they like our work? Was it top quality? Were the QC and quality control rounds in place, or were we shipping subpar design, right? So we'll do all sorts of stuff like that. We'll do that independently. So we'll just kind of say, okay, the project's done in the next week. You do yours, I'll do mine, and we'll find a time to talk about our answers together, right? Okay. And then what's cool is at the end of that, because we'll be, before we share our answers, we'll make very sure that, like, okay, this is not a place to be critical of one another. We are going to be ascertaining weaknesses in you, So it's very difficult not to just point the finger. You have to look at yourself and analyze your mistakes, but you also have to very kindly and assertively express where you think, if there's anybody else involved in this project, where you think they may have made a mistake without demonizing them, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really important consideration. And then at the end, you kind of powwow and you kind of make a commitment to each other, and ours is along the lines of, I commit myself to my team members and partners from past, present, and future. When we are aligned, there's little that can stop us. So we sign that. It's kind of a little ritual that we do. And that's just one example. And the same kind of process follows for independent projects. So we'll make an info product, for example, and we'll have questions related to that project that we go through, and we do the same thing. He does his, I do mine, we do it together. And then finally, we do kind of like a quarterly one where it's just kind of a 50,000 foot view of where are we now? What about our short-term goals? Are we hitting those? What about the medium ones and the long-term ones? And so, yeah, these kinds of questions asked about, recent periods of history can be applied to any area.
So you and your partner, you guys were friends before this, or was this a partnership that happened just due to the business?
That's an interesting situation. We used to have another partner. So it used to be three of us. Mm-hmm. I was good friends with this guy, and I worked for him a couple different times in the past. He worked for me a couple different times in the past. He had known Mo, right, who's my current partner, and they had been part of a mastermind group together. They had decided that they were going to start a business, and I had joined them on a trip to New York for a workshop that was to be the beginning of the business, and I'd impressed Mo enough. I just met him for the first time, Mauricio, who you were going to connect with, yep. Quinn, and he was like, why don't you be the third partner, right? And so that made a lot of sense. I had this, the way the relationship was kind of built at that point was, Aaron, our third partner, was very, very creative. Mo was a very, very technically savvy. He's a SaaS guy. He built software in the past. He's a code matrix reading data dealer. And then I was in the middle, right? I was the analytical guy that was creative. I could speak both languages and I could communicate. I could translate the language of these two guys to each other. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. So that's how I met Mo. Then when Aaron left the company, it was a kind of an interesting thing. Obviously, Mo and I have become friends, but I think because we didn't begin as friends, I don't know how I can recommend this to people, but I think it's a really good way to build a business relationship. Because I've seen a lot of business relationships that started as friendships mm-hmm. have these strange dynamics that are often very hard to deal with and often lead to the business failing, right? Or the relationship dying, or both. So it's hard to prevent that. I also know that it's one of the most rewarding things in the world to make some money with a buddy. So it's interesting. But yeah, Mo was not a friend. I met him and we were partners, and we've got a really stable relationship that's predicated on business, and then the friendship next, Yep. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's an interesting thing that's evolved between he and I.
Yeah, it does. I was actually trying to find out if it would be, maybe the best thing would be to have a business partnership when you were not previously friends, because that could interfere when you know somebody as a friend. You may not want to, you may look at that as a friendship partnership instead of a right. business partnership.
So, it makes it makes certain conversations hard. Money is the great exacerbator, as I like to say. It makes everything difficult. It complicates family relations. It complicates friendships. It complicates marriages. It complicates country, international relationships. Money is delicate. It is also something that obviously builds things too, right? It builds relationships quite well. And if things are going well, there's little that money will do to hurt that. Money is nothing but fuel to the success fire. But it does. It adds another dimension, I guess, is the point. And I think it's a really appropriate comparison to say a business relationship with a friend is very similar to marriage. I'm no expert. I've been married for a year, but I'm already, psychoanalyzing everything as I do. And it's the prerequisite is that both parties have to be committed equally to work, because it is work. It is perpetual progress. And when resentment starts to brew, it's usually because there's one party that's not doing, that's not pulling the weight that the other party thinks they should, right? So maintaining that perspective is also delicate, because we're delusional humans. But if you can manage to prove that everybody's working hard and the goals are all aligned, the beautiful things will happen both in marriage and in business with friends, I think.
Absolutely. There's a guy that I follow that, I don't know, as a podcaster, you probably know, and he was the host of The Art of Charm.
Oh, I'm not familiar.
Okay. But he always says that the one thing that his name is Jordan Arbinger. He has the Jordan Arbinger show now. The one thing that may cause those kinds of bitterness between partners could be expectations that you create in your mind.
Sure.
And then you don't share that expectation with that person. So now you expecting something that they have no clue you are expecting.
Right. So that's a great point. Yeah.
And thanks to that, I share that kind of with my partners that I have as well in other business. And so we decided that if there's any kind of expectations, let everybody know.
Write it down.
If there's any kind of resentment, anything that one did wrong, the first thing we do is let it out. So there's nothing that builds up. And that's kind of a great feeling, because we can actually, it gets to the point where we're super close that you can, when you're so close to somebody that you can insult them as a compliment.
Yeah, totally.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we do it.
That's really important that you bring up. And I think that might be one of the reasons why, all things considered, when we did lose Aaron, and our third partner, it was pretty amicable. We had a pretty robust operating agreement in place in the beginning. Right. And we didn't this is kind of what I see happen when friends go into business. They say, we don't need an operating agreement. Everything's always going to be fine. Right. Yes. We'll always be able to, tell each other stuff. We'll always be able to communicate. And the truth is, it's hard when things actually start going bad. People are what is it? They don't like confronting. They're non-confrontational, right? Yeah. And so, especially when things are going bad, everything is easy to talk about when things are going good. So this operating agreement set the expectations, right? And made it very clear that when expectations weren't being met, nobody could be confused about it, right? And then, part of that postmortem process is very communicative. We are airing our dirty laundry on a regular basis, because, bad news always travels slower than good news. And so holding that in, like you were saying, is cancer.
Yeah, yes, it is. So I want to ask you something about the agency, but before I do that, I want to bring up something that I was gonna mention at the beginning of the show for those that are watching the video edition, is the fact that Aiden is inside a closet.
Oh yeah. So, physically, not metaphorically.
yes, actually, literally in the closet, and the reason why is because it's the place that has best soundproofing.
Oh yeah, that's correct. And honestly, just to give you a little bit more information, like my wife was an audio engineer, so she's a pro, man. And whenever we move somewhere, it always takes us the longest to finally set up a studio. So we just moved back from Portland to Arizona. And obviously this is not what our studio looks like, right? But it's the rule of thumb as a filmmaker is people will always forgive bad video if the audio is good. But if you've got the best video in the world and the audio is bad, for some reason, people just cannot forgive it. So if you're going to skew one way or another, go for the audio. And that's what I'm doing. And the truth is, these coats are beautiful. So, I mean, we've got mink, we've got fox, some real, Sorry. Some not,
Oh,
but yeah, and then we've got the comforter. We've got everything possible that could possibly dampen sound is in this room by accident. So we decided to use it, at least temporarily.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I actually bought a kit from Amazon that is kind of like a portable studio. So when I travel and I go and I'm podcast from the hotel,
Sure.
you could put a microphone inside this foam booth. It's like, I don't know, like a foot by 1 foot, and you put the microphone inside, and it's just as if you have
Beautiful.
your portable studio. So I can use that.
No. Yeah, no, that's great. And for those of you that can't afford the portable studio or would rather not buy it, some of the most amazing audio quality I have produced has been simply with the onboard microphone of a MacBook and a heavy blanket over your head. So if you
Yeah.
sit on a bed in a hotel room with a heavy blanket over your head and the computer, you'll sound like, I mean, there's no reverb in there. That is the deadest, most clean audio you'll get. It'll block out New York City fire trucks. So
Yeah.
yeah, or you can get that phone booth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
Then,
do
well, the
the
booth was, it's like a portable $100 booth on Amazon.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check this out.
Yeah. It's not much.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the agency, what exactly do you do? Is it only marketing?
It's a good question. Just like everything I've talked about so far, it's a little bit of everything. It probably shouldn't be. I philosophically am a big believer in niching, but in actual practice, I found it very difficult to do that. And I think that's a lot of people's story,
Yes.
right? Is that, you see the value in being very, very focused in your product, in your target market, in your ideal user. But when it comes to it, there's people always asking us for software. There's people always asking us for video production, graphic design, branding, strategy, copywriting, content writing. And then also, funnel build outs, landing pages, pay-per-click advertising, Facebook. We do a lot of it. With these postmortems, though, have in the last couple of years have been pretty good in starting to whittle down. So we don't do a lot of web builds anymore. We do app development, but it's very different than web builds. We've determined that there are too many variables. The communication has never been perfect. I'm sure there's other people that have perfected this process, but the time and energy that it would take to continue perfecting it would be difficult and would not be worth it, because we've already identified at least a handful of other products that have clear ROI, where we can see from the beginning to the end and the light at the end of the tunnel before the project starts. And we know how much expense is coming and we know how much profit is coming. And, we've got a long ways to go till we find literally the holy grail product that we want to dump all of our eggs into as far as that basket. Mm-hmm. I do believe in that, but it's like I said, it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to justify. And also your reputation that you've set doing amazing works in the past on your portfolio continue to attract people in this world where no data ever gets removed from the internet, right?
Yes.
So people are still calling me up to want to get their wedding videos done. And I used to make amazing, beautiful wedding videos, just jerks the tears right out. But it is not a very profitable thing. It's a very demanding relationship between the producer and the client, and the stakes are pretty high if you mess up. So, yeah. So it's, the cons and the pros are pretty clear, and I don't do wedding videos anymore.
Nice. So
Yeah.
For your agency, what are some of your favorite tools, or for you personally, while working in the agency, what are some of your favorite tools?
That's a great question. Trello is the project management platform that I live and breathe daily. It's a very simple Kanban type project management system with columns and cards. So you've got different phases like backlog, to do, doing, in process, done. And you create tasks and you move them from left to right, from doing to done. And it's really good in project management and in the way my mind works, but also in communication. So what's funny that I find with a lot of companies is they always have kind of a standalone chat interface. So a lot of people use Slack. Some people use Stride or Google Chat and stuff like that. But Trello has a nice comment interface. And why would you go into Slack and say, remember the project where we're 3 rounds in, I'm talking about version A of the graphic design for the banner, B placement, the upper right-hand corner of that, I need you to change the blue to the green, right? Why would you do that in a chat if you can just go into the project in the task and say, here's the attachment, change the upper right-hand corner blue to green? You just simply by taking it inside of the project task itself, eliminate all the need to describe everything else. It's a contextual conversation. So I like Trello for those reasons. And I'm just a big fan of Google Drive and the Google Suite. Collaborative creativity is the way the world works, right? So from project strategy and writing, either in a Google Doc, a spreadsheet, or Google Slides, to invoicing or proposal crafting, and finally into file version storage and transferring and sharing. It's a beautiful little thing. I'm not the only person that likes it, of course, because Google is a huge beast, but I find it nice to have it all in the same place.
Yeah. Yeah, they are still a huge beast. And do you still use Google for advertising for your kind of pay-per-clicks and sponsored ads?
We do, and it's interesting. You're an Amazon guy. We've done a lot of Amazon marketing and Facebook marketing, but for some reason, Google is still the pay-per-click and the retargeting that we've been able to do on Google just continually dwarfs everything else that we've tried. We haven't stopped doing that other stuff because it's always good to diversify those channels, in our opinion. But man, it is a hard thing to argue with when they, and their platform for reporting that data is really, it's really pretty incredible too. So yeah, the answer is a big yes.
Yeah, no, I really like Google too. Before Facebook was the big beast that it is today for when it comes to advertising, Google, of course, was the powerhouse at the time, and everybody was on Google. But even back then, there was a lot of chances to lose money by or waste money on wrong keywords. And I remember probably, I don't know, man, it's probably 2007 or something, Neil Patel explaining that the keyword strategy that he had on his AdWords, and it would be, for example, instead of targeting high heel shoe, or right, he would not use those kind of broad keywords and put like red high heel shoe something.
Denver, Colorado, right? Yeah.
So that means when you actually type that, you're not just looking to a picture of a red shoe to save as and use as homework for a project. You're actually looking to buy a red high heel shoe, right? Under $50, whatever.
Right.
So since then, I started using that technique, all long tails and with buying intent. I was trying to find buy intent, put on those keywords, and it works magic. So if you're only paying for the ones that are actually trying to buy something, that it becomes a huge or a very profitable, right?
Totally. And I think you touched on something that is at the cornerstone of what we preach as brand strategists at Vitals, which is know what you're trying to do. Don't make a pretty picture because it's pretty. Don't make a beautiful video because it's beautiful. Know your users, and like you said, know what you want them to do. You are literally from top to bottom funnel making sure that the CTA is by intent, right? That's what you said, by intent?
Yes.
And so we have a proprietary discovery process. It's almost like a workshop. Well, it is a workshop. It's a 2-day session that we conduct for new clients when we onboard them. It's expensive. But what we do is we roll up 4 hours each day and we diagnose where they're at with their current users, right? We figure out who they're trying to serve, how they've been trying to serve them. And then we dig into their psychographics. Who else do they listen to? What kind of voice and tone do they respond to best? What kinds of look and feel do they respond to best, right? And we use that to inform every single piece of collateral, strategic campaign. And it's always focused on knowledge of who these users are, what makes them tick, and how to get them to do what you want, you know? And obviously what the best thing to do is to find the alignment, to find the thing that serves you by serving them. So if you've got a product that betters their life and they can pay for it, you benefit by getting money, they benefit by bettering their lives. And that's the way I believe the economy ought to turn, and I think it does mostly. So if you can figure that stuff out and get that buy intent in, literally the first thing they see, there's no surprises. People don't feel like they're tricked, and they value you and they appreciate that. And in our experience, that's how you build really, really solid brand loyalty.
I really like that. Yeah, brand loyalty is like
it's so hard to build. It's so easy to break.
So tell me something. On your agency, Vital's agency, you are not, you're still finding more clients, correct? For yourself?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What kind of strategies are you using now to generate more leads into the business?
It's a great question. We, for a long time, and we still to some degree, have this strange struggle where in the beginning we weren't careful about exactly what I just said. We didn't target our users specifically. And as a result, we have two audiences right now. We have an audience of, our ideal client, the people that we actually do creative services for, they don't find us online, right? These are the people, multi-billion-dollar venture-backed tech startups don't search Google for creative brand strategy, you know? But these people send their C-suite marketing strategists to conferences, right? So we go to conferences to find clients. We're going to HubSpot's Inbound conference coming up here in September. We've gone to that conference for years now. We really love it. We're always looking for other cool conferences. And it's referral and word of mouth based. It's strange. It's hard to scale it. But the other thing is we're structured in our agency where we're going for quality, not quantity. We do high deal, high ticket relationships and retainer contracts instead of low ticket churn and burn products. Yeah. So we tend to, our strategy as it stands is to build a foundation of clients like that, and then focus our marketing and digital spend and all of our content strategy around our second audience, which is the creative entrepreneur trying to do what we're doing, right?
Yes.
So this is where Fizzle comes in perfectly, because we found that the majority of the people that come to our site, that read our blogs, they work for other agencies. They came out of art school and they're trying to get their site up and figure out how to bill their clients and how to sell and, you know, how to do our kinds of discoveries, how to do our kinds of user profiling, how to do our kinds of postmortems, right? How to buy our yellow shoes. Rattling off the products on our site right now. But so what we do is we teach and we educate via our free content and solve real problems and equip our audience with weapons for their clients in the form of our info products in our store. So what's tough though is obviously, you know, it's going to take a long time to build revenue from the info product thing to ever compete with the foundation of retainer clients, but that's the long game, right? So keep writing, keep podcasting, keep teaching, keep educating, keep making courses, and all the while pushing digitally with our ad spends and our other kind of organic methods to get traffic and sales up on that front. And eventually we'll see a little bit of a flippening, hopefully, where all of a sudden we have a recurring revenue stream from our info products and we're less reliant on our clients. And I think that's kind of the only way to really scale a service business without continually adding team members, you know, which we're really not interested in.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like the fact that you did not mention scraping LinkedIn.
Oh my God. Did you see what I posted recently, or are you just also frustrated?
No, I'm also frustrated, but I did see that you replied to one of those emails.
Yeah, that I mean, this is my new game, I think, is figuring out like kind of angry professional ways to respond to people. And yeah, can I read what I wrote recently?
Yes,
okay, hold on, let me find it. But
Yeah, it fits perfectly into a show I did about probably a month ago on my other podcast, where I grouped together all the emails that I got randomly
right.
that had been scraped from LinkedIn, some that really didn't even have my name right, and normally
Oh
those are
man.
populated by a bot, so I
Right, right. That's not
get
even
that wrong.
somebody. Gosh.
And yeah, and some of the replies what I replied to them. So I did a podcast about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's awful, man. I really, it frustrates me quite a bit. But yeah. The truth is like I have to be gentle because the truth is this is a strategy that does work. It's a numbers game strategy. It's a churn and burn. It's a scorched earth campaign, and those work. I don't like them, and I wish the world wasn't this way, but they work. You know, because for every angry guy that goes out of his way, like me or you, to write an email about why we don't appreciate this, there is somebody falling for it. There's somebody saying, "Oh, you found me via LinkedIn, and you see the stuff that I'm doing, and you think it's interesting. Tell me more." You know,
Yes.
there's people that, and it works. So, and the truth is, there are good products behind the campaigns that are getting into the hands of people who need it, I believe. So I don't want to be too angry. But that being said, here's what I wrote.
Yeah.
So this was, I think, the sixth. Yeah, it was the sixth email from a guy. I won't mention his name. And I said, "Hey, blank. I'm not interested and do not appreciate cold emails, having had my address scraped from LinkedIn. You've sent me 6 emails. Please only send me one more confirming you understand and respect my wishes to receive no further communication. If you would like to include a budget for what you'd pay to have a consult on the betterment of your email marketing strategy, you may do so." um, so, because I do believe this is the Fizzle thing, man. It's value first. It's, don't disrespect somebody's email inbox. I did not give you my email address. You don't have an unsubscribe button. That's
Mm.
illegal. That is illegal, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So so I could flag them. I'm not going to report as abuse. I'm just going to send these funny little emails, I think. And the truth is if on LinkedIn, if your offer is compelling, and I've gotten a couple, and actually I'll give a shout out to this guy. I forget his name, but it was funny. It caught my attention. His second follow-up email is what got me, right? His first one was kind of the same thing, like, "Hey, thanks for connecting. I see you're in this space. I do this. I think we could connect and talk about other things." And that always means I have something to sell you. His second email said, "Well, it appears as though the same thing that happened to my friend just happened to you. He got abducted by aliens last week. I haven't seen him since. How are things up there?" Question mark. And I'm like, all right, I'll bite. And so I can appreciate lightheartedness. I can appreciate humor and cleverness, man. You tell me something that makes me think, I'm in. But if it's just the same old 3 paragraph, "Hey, I think we could help each other" nonsense,
Yeah. I
I'm
have
I'm
a.
gonna jump down your throat, you know?
Are you open to other profitable opportunities or something like that? Join
That's
my
it.
MLM.
That's the
Yeah.
sign off, man.
You know what? I want
Oh.
to. There was one that caught me
Mhm.
as well, and I can't remember word by word what it said, but it was kind of like that one. So I had the first just introduction email. "Hey, nice, thank you for the connection, whatever. Pleasure to meet you."
Sure.
And then a few days later, he sent one. He's like, "Oh, by the way, um, if you thought I wasn't going to try to sell you something, you're wrong. I am."
Oh, I love it.
Yes. And I'm like, oh my God, I love the honesty, because
Right.
we all know when you get an email, you all know you're going to be sold, right? Something has to be,
Just don't
right?
lie to me, man, you know?
Exactly. So, we're going to try to offer value, try to build a relationship. We know the strategy. And no, he went straight to, if you think I'm not going to try to sell you something, you're wrong. I am. And here it is, blah, blah, blah. And he was straight to the point and so honest. And I replied, like, I love the honesty.
Right.
I actually may use that myself.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm noticing is a trend in every kind of advertising and marketing. And I think that's what Google is optimizing for now, is kind of what you're talking about. And I mentioned this a little bit a while ago. Um, I did this big presentation. There was a cookie company. We love these guys in New Zealand. It's one of our first big consulting gigs. We went out.
Sorry, it's literally a cookie company?
Yeah, it's called
Okay.
Cookie Time. And they are something like the Nabisco of cookies in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And the people that own this company and that run this company are just like some of the finest people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. They flew us out, had us give keynote presentations to their marketing team and their factory floor, and then gave us a tour of the factory, and we were eating cookies off their conveyor belt. It was amazing. And then they took us bungee jumping and helicopter riding on a glacier. So, I mean, we're trying to get some more relationship building with them. But our keynote presentation was the evolution of marketing, right? And looking into the Middle Ages, right, when it was, people didn't even really know that they could lie to each other. It was, you have this, I have this. If it's a win-win, we can trade. Then quickly thereafter, people started realizing that you could trick people, right? People started realizing that I could have this thing that looked like this thing that you would value, and I could give it to you, and I could get away before you realized it. And there was no leaving a negative feedback on Facebook to scare these people off. So for a long time, you could be pretty successful and avoid many of the consequences being dishonest in marketing and in advertising, right? And so with display advertising in kind of like the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and traditional advertising in radios and television and billboards and magazines, you started getting, you weren't able to lie anymore, but the personability dropped off. You were casting wide nets. You didn't really have any way of measuring your metrics, figuring out what campaigns were doing well. And if you did, they were really downstream, and you weren't sure how many variables were part of the success or failure, right?
Yeah.
Then in the 80s and 90s, we saw this telemarketing advent, right? Where it was just like this horrible, and I was part of it, and I take full responsibility. I am sorry. I apologize. In the fierce and relentless obnoxiousness of telemarketing, because not only was this like it's the same thing that's going on with this direct message thing. They've got a direct line to your most intimate time, right? Usually when you're at home. This is the days of landlines, right?
Yes.
People call when you're at dinner, and they'd yammer on about something and probably be lying to you about it, right? So it was like dishonest, manipulative, and obnoxious. And so obviously that's something that people don't like. But again, it was found valuable in terms of it being a numbers game. And for people that did not care about marketing, didn't care about reputation, they could do that. But now it's hard to not have a scarlet letter emblazoned on you wherever you go. So you have to pick your methods well, right? You have to be very strategic. Negative reviews don't go away. You can't, there's reputation management, but that'll only go so far to bump you down to the second page of Google if your tactics are dishonest or silly, right? So what's happening right now is the conventional methods of advertising on Facebook and Google are no longer rewarding this kind of dishonesty. And us as consumers are starting to wise up too. So it's kind of cool to be in marketing, in my opinion, in this time in the world, because it has to be a win-win. You have to be creative. You have to be clever. And if you're succeeding, it's probably because you're serving people. How cool is that? You know, I'm stoked on that. So there's still a lot of the weirdness. People will always try the tactics, but it's getting harder and harder to get away with it. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it is super hard now to get away with.
Yeah, you know better than anybody else, man, on Amazon. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and still on Amazon, the internal system we can use for pay-per-click is still very easy because the product is already there. So you're advertising a product that is already for sale on Amazon. So there's not much that you, on a pay-per-click campaign, that you can
even mislead about.
Mislead, right?
Right.
This is the picture of the product. This is the keyword that you search for, and I'm going to target you for that. So that one is still very very easy to maintain, but still any product that's related to weight loss, anything that can have potential claims is just anywhere, right?
Right.
Amazon, Facebook, Google is just so hard to be able to say certain words that trigger a negative connotation, even through algorithms alone,
Of course.
not even just a person.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And then you have just, and the darkness is that when you have something like that, the way you sell your product is you back it up with peer reviews, right? And that was, for at one point, really, a weapon in the arsenal of the do-gooders like me to get the testimonials and to feature the testimonials. But as we know, there are bot armies out there that are being mobilized by very, very incentivized large world institutions to create false personas in the thousands. And so, when we're not talking about political agendas, and we're simply talking about products, that can be spoofed too. You can spoof enough 5-star reviews to bury the real negative feedback if you can do that. So there's still loopholes that hopefully will get closed up. What's exciting though is that the platforms that everybody's using to market their products or sell their products, it's in the platform's best interest to put that stuff to bed, to actually get rid of that stuff and cut the cancer out. So that's kind of cool too, is that the the forces of good are aligned, I guess.
Yeah. I get approached by a lot of people that want to offer the kind of services. And when it comes to Amazon businesses, it doesn't matter if it's mine or my clients, I will not touch anything that is black hat, of course, not only pure white hat, nothing, no gray, nothing. And when it comes to external platforms, I could accept if there's something that is not black hat, but is somewhat, it's not in the terms, just like, getting away with a Facebook campaign with the word fat loss. If you could get away with that, I wouldn't mind that, right?
Right.
That's not really black hat. It's just being able to get away with it.
Right.
But
they've cracked down a little too hard on that, perhaps,
Just last week, somebody contacted me. They wanted to see if I wanted Facebook advertising, and they told me we can create 2,000 Facebook
personas.
No, it was
oh, okay.
accounts, advertising accounts per day. 2,000 Facebook ad accounts per day, because they were getting banned that quick, and they were creating about
to figure out a way to.
Yeah, so I'm
terrifying. Yikes.
Yeah, it wasn't people's accounts, it was ad accounts.
Right.
That is so insane, and just the amount of,
yeah.
I guess it is bots, so there's not too much work involved, but still.
Right. Well, that has to be the same. It's just a downstream of the same thing, because you can't create multiple ad accounts on a single user profile that has been banned from the ad account. So it has to be at the beginning.
It has to be users too.
Users, and then ad accounts, and it sounds better because you're like, oh, well, it's not user accounts. It's just the ad accounts. It's like, yeah, they'll probably make you an admin with all the privileges, but still, okay. There's still evil in the world. Our work is not done. That's what that means. That's okay, because I'm ready and willing to fight.
So, Aiden, let us know, let everybody here that's listening, if they want to find you and Vital's agency, The Fizzle Show, where do they go to find this?
Yeah, I'd suggest hitting us up at vitals.agency, www.vitals.agency, no .com here. Also, if you want to hear me rant and rave about building a business with some other people that are really entertaining when they rant and rave, go to fizzle.co, or just simply search The Fizzle Show on your podcast app of choice. And then finally, I think maybe I'll put this out there just so that I can motivate myself a little bit, but I have a personal blog where I really get weird. If you want a little weirdness, I didn't give you too much of that, but I live the examined life, I think. And I'm just always learning. I don't have any answers. And if you want to join me for that weird journey, you can go to megafishbein.com, FISHBEIN.com. That's my personal blog. And hopefully I can get some time and energy to start updating that regularly, because it's really fulfilling. And that's something that doesn't have any asks involved. There's no products associated. So that that is just pure goodness. So
there you
that's
go.
that.
So you can check that one out, Mega Fishbein. And you just did something that I love doing too, is kind of putting myself in the line when there's something I should do more, and then if you announce it publicly, now you have to do it.
Yeah, because I definitely, what we just discovered, I don't like being a liar or a hypocrite, so I got to do it now.
There you go.
Yeah.
Aiden,
It's been fun, man. This has been super fun.
Man, thank you so much for being here. It's always fun talking to you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, another time then.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for subscribing to Fail Fast Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review and visit failfastpodcast.com for show notes, Quinn's social media, or even to tell us your story.